lot of heavy lifting that FedEx does in this city, and the most recent example of that is this NIL collective that they announced over the weekend. $5 million a year to the University of Memphis for 5 years. That equates to $25 million of FedEx's money going to football, men's and women's basketball, and other women's teams at the University of Memphis. The NIL is important in the current landscape of college sports. FedEx understands this. This is huge to see Memphis athletes have the opportunity to represent one of the largest brands in the world, a Fortune 500 company. This is big stuff.
It is big stuff. And I'm glad that FedEx recognizes this because there was a time where facility upgrades and that type of stuff was really the key to keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. Now it's just a money game. Like if you want to get players, and I don't mean to be hyperbolic or compare one thing to the other, but if you're trying to get football players, the most important thing isn't to put $200 million into a football stadium. It's to put $2 million into a football player's pocket. And that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you get the point. This is, come down to a little bit like, think of NBA free agency. Chandler Parsons once decided he wanted to live in Memphis as opposed to Portland, not because he wanted to live in Memphis instead of Portland, but because he thought the Grizzlies were a better fit, but because the Grizzlies had one big contract on the table and Portland didn't have one quite as big. So he said grit and grind and he moved to Memphis. You know the rest of the story. That's what recruiting is now. I don't want to say nothing else matters because that's not true. But the main thing that matters now is money, and FedEx is putting, whether it's Ryan or Penny or any other coach on that campus who has access to this pot of money, for lack of a better phrase, you're giving them a chance to go out and compete in certain – they can't fight every fight with an SEC school or a Big Ten school, but they can pick their spots. And I don't want to say it's not a coincidence or is a coincidence, but it is noticeable that within 48 hours of FedEx announcing we're supplying, the University of Memphis announcing that this money is going to be available. Well, Memphis is in contention for a McDonald's All-American who just reopened his recruitment. You can't get in that fight unless you've got NIL money. The other people in the fight are Arkansas and Louisville. Like that's John Calipari and the University of Louisville. If you don't have money, you can't get in that fight. The fact that the young man is saying, I'm open and looking at, really focused on Louisville, Arkansas, and Memphis, that suggests on a very basic level that Memphis is able to at least compete dollar for dollar in some way with two of the biggest NIL schools working in college basketball.
You can't have the checks if there's no account with money. Unfortunately, that's not how finances work.
Yes,
I really do wish that it was. I was actually talking to a college football player over the weekend, not at the University of Memphis, but it was eye-opening from a standpoint of this conversation that a lot of college athletes, I assume, based on his account, are having, where it's worth it just to put your name in the transfer portal because maybe you go and get more money. And the difficulties in countering that, this deal with FedEx and an NIL collective, like you said, it just allows Memphis to compete. At the minimum, it puts you at the top of the AAC, where should be, period. But to even be able to flirt regionally and nationally is huge for a school like Memphis, who does ultimately have goals of not getting left behind in whatever ends up being the college sports ecosystem, whether it be an eventual leap to the Big 12 or the ACC if that comes crumbling and dumbling with Florida State and Clemson. Is there a spot there? This at least gives you the momentum going into that next wave.
There's no question. You should be able to out-purchase any AAC school with this pot of money, and it won't allow you, if you're spreading $5 million a year around 4 different sports, and I know that it won't be done equally, nor should it, but simply put, $5 million spread among 4 big sports is not going to allow you to compete with Texas and Alabama and Arkansas and schools like that. But it will allow you to pick your spots and to maybe keep a person who otherwise might be out the door. Because to your point, like if my son were a college-age athlete with real market value right now, and let's say that he were a basketball player at the University of Memphis, I graduated from there. On some level, it would have been my dream for my kid to be a Tiger. But just, and I don't know that I would do this because I wouldn't want to mess with my son's happiness. But let's just say, because my son's, my mortgage doesn't rely on my son going to the NBA, right? Like I don't need my kids to change my life. But often in certain sports, you really can go from a tough situation to an incredible situation based off of, athletic ability. So if that were my reality, I would tell my son, or at least advise him, we need to get into the transfer portal every year and just see what's out. It's no different than, not you, but somebody taking a resume and just making sure it's in everybody's hands at all times, so that, hey, if you ever need me, I'm here. I've been a professional, I guess, for 25-ish years now.
Thanks for putting that in quotes.
Why do I do that? I find myself using quotes all the time now, and I don't know why I do that.
Professional.
I don't. Why I did mean that. I think was actually I think that was a reasonable use of quote marks, professional, because I'm not complete. You'll get them. I don't, but I have noticed myself using these a little bit more than I probably should have.
You're an air quoter now?
I think so.
Ooh.
I'm gonna work on it.
Yikes.
I'm gonna work on it. I'm gonna work on it. Here's the thing I'm trying to say. I've been a professional for a while. Professional. I benefited every time I had two different people.
Oh, yeah.
Offering
absolutely.
me. Every time, not bidding war, I'm not trying to overstate it, but every time I had multiple offers is when I benefited.
Yes.
And the best way to get multiple offers now, if you're a college basketball player, is get into the transfer portal and see who wants you and see what they got. And so this amount of money that will now be accessible to Penny Hardaway or Ryan Silverfield or any number of other coaches over there, it can not only allow you to go out and pursue a McDonald's All-American or a heralded transfer, but it can maybe prevent one of your players from getting into the transfer portal. Hey, you don't have to go. What do you think's out there for you? I got this right now. Just let's sign whatever we need to sign and stay right here. All of this can be helpful.
And sometimes money on the table just feels good. It's solid. You know it's there.
Right.
You know what you can get.
That's right.
I do think from a long-term standpoint, this is symbolic of an eventual necessity of change, because we're going to pay players. Like, I'm sorry, if you're still out there crying.
Yeah, we're not undoing any of this.
We're past
right.
that point. But if you do, like you said, with not bidding wars per se, but contracts. Like, I have also been in a situation where a contract kept me from having the ability to jump over to another job or having to pay some sort of a fine within a contract. Like, someday we could see if college athletes get to the point where they are employees of the university. Actually,
that's the
employees.
end game. That's
right.
the finish line.
Where there's some sort of an incentive, or not an incentive, like a contractual obligation,
of
where
course.
if you don't, let's take it to football, if you don't play in this bowl game, you're going to miss a segment of your money. If you transfer, you're going to have to give this back and work
This is a deal where we all know where we're headed.
Right.
We just don't know
when.
We don't know when we're going to get there and exactly what roads we're going to take, but we all know where we end up. We could end up there in 2 years. It could be 20, but we'll end up at a place where you will hear something like this. John Smith, a 6'8" forward from Whitehaven High School, has agreed to a 3-year, $4.5 million contract with the University of Memphis to play football for Ryan Silverfield or whatever. That will be a real thing that happens someday. I just don't know how we're going to get there and when we're going to get there. But that's ultimately what all this leads to, because right now, what I just explained to you is exactly what coaches are fed up with, which is, yo, man, we're taking care of you, and you're still out there looking around. Now, what the players will say to the coaches is, yo, like, you're looking around too. We're all looking around, see what the best deals be. Like, you got an agent. What you got an agent for? If you ain't also,
not for fun.
Yeah, if you're not also interested in maybe seeing what else is out there, but coaches would be like, what coaches get worn down, and don't feel sorry for them, they're making millions and millions and millions of dollars, but where they get a little frustrated is like, I shouldn't have to work every day, 365 a year, to convince the players who are already here and already taken care of to, like, please come back, please don't leave me. Every semester it's a new, they're weighing their options against this. It would be much more beneficial if I could actually sign something that looks like a 2-year contract or a 3-year contract, like we're committed to each other. Because right now it really is as simple in some cases as the University of Memphis women's basketball program can get you an NIL deal worth $125,000. You can say, okay, that's great. That sounds wonderful. and then immediately get on the phone with your agent and say, all right, we got a baseline 125. See if anybody else can get me to 150. Yeah. And now you're out there looking for 150 the whole time. The University of Memphis thinks they've got you locked in at 125. No, 125 is where you're at right now, but you're looking for 150 every day. That's the part that gets frustrating. And if you could lock people into multi-year contracts, then that goes away a little bit.
The Jessica Benson Show with CJ Hurt, live every weekday at 8 a.m.